really, after all this time, even really know each other very well. They didn't meet organically. They live hundreds of miles apart. It's very difficult to work out, even for them, how they create music. But strangely, it makes them really focused and really pro. We'll hear about whether or not getting on a Spotify official playlist is their big break. And importantly, the influence of the Aberdeen metal scene. A chat coming up then with the three main guys, Clark, Phil and Andy, with an album coming out and a big live show in Camden Town to celebrate it. I first asked Clark how they managed to organise things.
It takes a lot of, oh, you free this weekend? No, but I'm free this weekend. Oh, well, I can't make it this weekend. Between 5 adults who all have busy, worthless lives. Yeah. So we nailed down one for the other week, and we all met up in Newcastle as kind of a halfway point.
Yeah, Newcastle being the meeting, the halfway point between Aberdeen and where I am, which is arbitrarily chose somewhere in between. So, how does it work? It doesn't really. The logistics don't really work, but we just do our best to make them work because it's the only way that we can do it right now. So
this was the first situation in like 7 or 8 years where we've actually got together and rehearsed, and we haven't immediately had to do a gig like in the next 24 hours, so that was quite luxurious.
Someone said to me many years ago that being in a band is like a permanent holiday with your mates, and I thought, great, I'm going to have some of that. But of course it's nothing like that, isn't it? It's especially these days. So how do you how did you become a band in the first place if you all live in different places? Clark, you first.
So I knew of Andy in the scene because I'm also from Aberdeen. So the name Prog Fox was floating around all Facebook, and I think you had a SoundCloud as well, didn't you?
I did, yes. I posted all my shenanigans on there.
And so I was already a fan of Andy's music. We're like mutuals on Facebook, memes and whatever. And he just hit me up one day and been like, hey, I need a live drummer for this project. Are you in? And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And so they sent me the 2 songs they'd finished so far, which is Reanimate and Starseeker. And I was like, well, these are really good, but, I do some drum programming, so, I can add a little bit here and there. And then it basically just turned into me writing the whole thing. Andy and Phil, I know, met on... Was it forums and stuff talking about doing an electronic?
It was just on Facebook.
Was it Facebook?
Again, I just saw Andy kicking about, and I was already writing my own stuff. It was kind of like very, very proto Ihlo. It had like the beginnings of the proggy, metally, electronic-y foundation that Ihlo was going to be. But it was just me by myself, and then I sent them to Andy because I knew that he existed as someone in the space. And he was like, this is great. Do you want singing? Do you want vocals? And I was like, cool, let's do vocals. And then we wrote a whole album. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Andy, how did you then, if you were the fulcrum of that then, that nerd world, how did you do your checks and balances on everybody being in the group? Because obviously you shared similar interests, but how did you know that they weren't a bunch of wankers?
Well, with Phil, I had no idea. If I'd known what I know now, who knows? Who knows? No, I think it. I don't know. There was just something about the music that he was doing and the slow way that we started talking and communicating. Like there was no bullshit. There was no past experiences. There was no, oh, I've seen this guy kicking around the scene or college or something like that. So, to each other, we were just blank slates, and a lot of situations that's not going to work. Like, who knows? People don't get on well. People do get on well. I think because we were completely blank slates and we approached it wanting to just do music, we kind of approached it with like a sort of very professional, for the age that we were, business-minded type thing, where it's just like, right, no bullshit. Like, we want to just try to write good music together. We have no alliance, no allegiances to each other, nothing or other. Like, if someone's feelings get hurt, then it's because of what we're doing right now. It's not gonna, like, I'm not gonna offend Phil's long lost cousin or something, because that's how we met, you know. With Clark, yeah, like we kind of knew each other like in the scene and like sort of mutuals, but I think I'd only met him like once at a show in Glasgow, you know. Up until we really started like actively working on the music, we didn't know each other like at all. It was just this little triangle that eventually started getting closer and closer, and all the points got together and we finally met after having focused explicitly on the music.
That's really pure. Clark, both you and Andy have used the word the scene there. What do you mean by that?
So there was back in the day, it was the Aberdeen kind of metal scene, and that was the kind of a snapshot of where that place was at that time. It was just metalcore bands, wall-to-wall metalcore bands. And I think it got to the point where like a whole bunch of them had just started like self-destructing. So it wasn't exactly, you know, I was just at the point where I'd just like, you know, left Aberdeen to go down to Edinburgh for university. The scene wasn't in a positive place where I left it. Like the bands and the kind of relationships between them was in a really like weird place. So it was the kind of thing that I just knew a lot of people from that. And like Andy was in Arinthia, you were playing drums for.
Arinthia, yeah, like a sort of progressive metal act, like very different from the majority of stuff that was in Aberdeen at the time.
Yeah, so I was like aware of that. And that was like for what else was kind of going on in Aberdeen at the time. That just like blew everything else out of the water, you know.
It's something I've obviously got to look into, isn't it? The Aberdeen prog rock metal scene. Because the only band I'd ever heard of from Aberdeen was APB. That's before your time. Yeah. Phil, right? Yes. So, Phil, how is this new album, different from the previous one?
I think the core kind of changes are the way that the album sounds, and there's a few different tendrils off of that, but the way that the album sounds is it's a much more natural sound. The first one is very, very polished, very, very clean, and I think the fact that it had programmed drums and bass really sort of create that feeling. And we wanted to get away from that. We wanted to sort of partially distance ourselves from it, but, you know, to prove that, you know, that it's a real band, it's real music. It's all being played properly, and, you know, like any other band. So the drums have a very, very big natural sound to them. The songs are, I think, have much more mature writing on them. They're very, very focused. We had the experience of writing an album before, and I think this time we just really knew what we wanted to do, what we were going for. We were exploring what we were going for initially, but, you know, with the first album, but with this one we knew what we wanted, and it was very, very focused songwriting. So
okay, yeah. So you got the feeling from that. So you got the feeling from the room, because there's some great social media footage of you lot farting around on the drums, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And talking of socials, Andy, your this band's social media game is always strong. It's been strong, and it's been very strong recently, where you're thinking, okay, we've kind of got to do this stuff, but we're going to do it in an Ihlo-y way. Mm-hmm. Is that fair? Did you have a meeting and thought, okay, look, we're just going to have to put our faces into people's phones to tell them we've got an album coming out? Was there any what was the social media strategy, Andy?
So, I have a pretty heavy background in sort of social media as like as a consumer. And as that sounds like such a stupid thing to say. Like everyone is. What I mean by that, what I mean by that is, you know, like the reason why myself and Phil met is because I spent way too much time in my late teen years posting memes and just posting crap online, and being one of these pages that you doom scroll and you like and you go, oh, that's funny, I like that, that's funny. Like that's
what controversial opinion meme.
Yeah, that was kind of my thing. So, you know, I feel like I have a very a keen eye for what the internet kind of looks like. I regularly judge people's social media presences, not in a nasty way, but just if I can. Sometimes I look at a band that I recently found and I like, and I go, oh, I can't see anything about them online, which in some ways is a good way. And then other bands sometimes just post too much. I'm not a huge fan of the TikTokification of how social media is nowadays. I don't really like the whole, POV, you're recording a drum beat and then all of a sudden a tiger comes out of nowhere. Like just some, a lot of musicians definitely feel very wary and just exhausted by this kind of thing, the sort of thing that the algorithm does push. So we definitely want to make sure that we're doing things in a legitimate, genuine way that feels right to us, that doesn't like commodify the band, that doesn't turn it into like a memeable product. Because the music that we're doing, we take the music very seriously. We don't take ourselves as people very seriously, as you'll see if you ever come to see a live show. But social media, there is that kind of in-between thing where we want to represent and show off the music, which is the most important thing, in sort of as professional a capacity as we possibly can. I tend to punch upwards with how I present the band online, because we're just doing this from our bedrooms, our living rooms, and I trained myself to be able to do this, to present the band in the best way possible, because then more people will hopefully take us seriously.
Does it take away some of the mystery of the music if you are putting your faces in people's hands, palms?
I think it definitely can, because, you can definitely be turned off by the personality behind a band and behind the music. A lot of people listen to music because they just want the music. They don't want to see, some ugly some ugly guy who's like spouting like really weird opinions, controversial stuff, or just saying stupid things or whatever, or like constantly talking about like the football score every week, like on their social media and stuff. A lot of people just want the music. In the age of social media, you have two identifiable things, and that is in general, like your branding, which to us, I guess, would be like artwork and music videos and stuff. But with music videos, obviously, that's our faces, and to some extent, our personality is attached to that. So it's a balance between being immediately recognizable to people when they're scrolling down on their phones. If they'll either see the album artwork or some single artwork or some association with the band, and they'll be like, oh, let's see what Ihlo's doing today. Or they'll see maybe my face and say, oh, that's the guy who was in that band. Like, what's he saying just now? And we try to just only really talk about things that are relevant to the band, so that when the person scrolls down and they see my face, it's not me going, oh, did you see what Tottenham got last night? It's me saying, hey, here's the thing about the band that you either would be interested in or you should be interested in.
When the golden hour fades, we build up from the ground. Fabled words that fell away, did they ever mean a thing to us? All of the ruin
Clark, can I ask you, I'll ask all three of you, I'll ask Clark to start with. I think one of the most, would I be right in saying, as a near boomer, would I be right in saying that one of the biggest things that's happened to the group in the last couple of weeks is being on the Spotify prog playlist? Because I do wonder if Spotify has now, you know, it's got its detractors, but Spotify has replaced radio. And to be on that official list, surely that is now going to put that song front and centre for the audience that you're after. Isn't that a great thing, Clark?
I think it's the sort of thing that gives you credibility, you know?
Yeah.
When you scroll past one of these playlists and you see, you know, a smaller band like Ihlo in amongst like new releases from very, very established bands. I think the credibility that gives is probably the most important thing.
That's a really good point. It legitimizes you as an artist. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So Andy, come in on this then. Is it? Have you just had your big break by being on a playlist, a Spotify one?
Absolutely not. But it does provide. It provides that credibility. I have no idea who these playlist editors are at Spotify. Are they genuinely super influential people, or is the playlist only influential because it's an official Spotify thing? Who knows? But there is, whether it's because it's something that we've built up in the industry, sort of like a myth, a rumor, a legend, you know. Regardless, like being on one of these official editorial playlists is considered to be, legitimizing in some way. And that's really cool. It's really nice to have that alongside, you know, this big wave of people who are currently listening to us just now, you know, because it's nice to know that we're having a big wave, not just from one playlist, but in general from a lot of different directions. You know, people are approaching the band, finding the band for the first time, or they're maybe coming back around to us because they maybe heard us many years ago or something. So yeah, I think Spotify in general, it's replaced radio and sort of MTV as well. You know, it's kind of the same thing as like you know, like Googling something. Like Google is a product, it's a company, but when you say that you're going to search something, you're going to Google it, right? Spotify is kind of that equivalent in like music listening in this kind of day and age. So it's definitely good to have like a bit of a stronger foothold in that as we go forward, because it legitimizes us to some extent as a band. But it's got its pros and cons, you know, like just because we have X amount of listeners or X amount of streams doesn't mean that we're going to, you know, sell a 200 capacity room. So it's doesn't necessarily have the same power as I think radio maybe did back in the day. Yeah.
I think, Phil, that track, the track we're talking about, Mute, does just absolutely scream single, doesn't it? And I love a single, me. And I think was when you were recording that, when you were mixing that, did you think, wow, you know, this is an absolute breakthrough track. Was it deliberate? Did it? I mean, I remember on your social media you said, so now's the time for the ballad.
The label Kscope actually recommended Mute. My parents both really like it.
A&Ring, and your parents.
My parents really said that was one of their favourites as well, because they don't really like the metal stuff. So they'll, you know, the lighter stuff, and they're like, yeah, Mute's a great choice.
That's the opposite of Berry Gordy at Motown, who would play potential singles to 7-year-olds, decide which would be the.
Yeah, I mean, a 7-year-old probably wouldn't choose
to the
this
mums
one.
and dads.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it just needed. We were interested in presenting something slightly different to the first two. We could have done another heavy one. We could have done another kind of like 5-minute banger sort of thing. There's only one other 5-minute banger on the album, but we decided, well, you've heard the poppier one, you've heard one of the heavier ones. Here's something a bit different. Which there isn't going to be a lot of on the album, but there is going to be some more of this lower key, atmospheric, very dark, brooding, synthy driven stuff. So let's just present something else. The ideas for the music video were different to the first two in quite a big way as well. So it was an opportunity to do something different there. So I think we just wanted to, you know, cover the whole diverse lengths of the band with the three singles. So people have heard.
I think that's fair.
You know, a lot of stuff that the album has to offer, and also the album has even more than that. So
yeah, no, and that's what they're for. Clark, there's some gigs coming up, album launches. How are you going to present this group live now?
So it's always been a balance between trying to play basically as much physically as we can, but the music we make is extremely dense. There's always going to be backing tracks. We're always going to have arenas and stuff. So right now the biggest thing as we're preparing for the show is how we're going to take these elements, which ones are actually going to be physically played, which ones are going to be through the speakers, and for what kind of feels best, And again, this isn't a conversation I need to have. I hit things with sticks, man. So I can just sit off.
You've presumably got some kind of guide in your headphones, and if you go wrong.
Yeah, well, everyone's got their in-ears. Everyone's got the metronome, so it's not just riding on me. And it's a nice backup. Because as a drummer, everything, if you're not using a click or anything like that, everything is centered on you. So
yeah.
it does provide a nice redundancy, because even if I do completely screw something up, the rest of the guys will be on click, they'll be on track, and I can just lock back into that.
Now I'm looking forward to. So this is part one of this conversation, because I do want to see if I can grab you at the gig as well, because I'll be at the Camden Town gig. It's a great little venue, that is. It's the fact that Camden Town is starting to slip down the pantheon a little bit, but there's two great rock venues there. There's that one and the Underworld. Andy, what does Ihlo mean? Is it, as I looked up on the internet, Zulu for eye?
That is what it is. Yeah, it's apparently it's a defunct word. That doesn't. I guess it does mean I, or it did. It doesn't mean I to us. It means nothing to us. It's just we were on day 3, day 4 of trying to find a cool one-word band name, which is very rare these days.
Gotcha.
Just something that sounded cool, wasn't too wordy, hadn't been taken before, and didn't really mean anything too deep. We didn't want a word that meant weird German words where it's this means going to your uncle's house to have roast chicken on a Tuesday when you're feeling kind of cold outside and you've got your sinuses full. We didn't want a word that was specific.
For the first time in forever, I feel awake, shaking off the dust from my brain. Try to find a way to ease the ache. A dream without
That's entitled Mute by Ihlo, I-H-L-O, in case you didn't know. And that's the track that we were talking about, which has been playlisted by Spotify. Before that, you heard the second single, dropped from the album, entitled Empire. And said album is out right now. Legacy, their first in almost 5 years. My huge thanks to Clark, to Phil, and to Andy. And the concert we were talking about, the album launch, is in Camden Town in northwest London, at a fabulous little place called the Black Heart. It's on the 20th of September. Get your tickets right now because it's a wee little place. Now, talking of long gestations, Jonathan Hultén has just dropped a new single himself from the album Eyes of the Living Night, a track called Dawn. Now, this was the first song written for what became that LP, and indeed the B footage of the video, which is also dropped, filmed by Jakob Johansson, featuring the dancer Amira Alexandra, was shot before the album even existed. Now, Hulten has spent quite a lot of time on this record, wrote a lot of songs and then collated them together. Let him tell you about how he was relaxed as he created the material for this LP before we hear the song Dawn. My name's Billy Reeves. Speak to you soon. Jonathan.
There was not any rush to see things turn out in a certain way or so, but this time around I actually started writing the songs for this album in the beginning of 2023 with Chance from Another Place, the debut album. That material there was written over a period of almost 10 years, maybe eight years or so. So instead of letting things unfold slowly over time, I wrote a huge bank of songs. The sketches amount to maybe up to 100 sketches, or it might have ended up even more than that in the end. But then over time, I guess over a limited time, you choose which ones of those sketches that happens to resonate the most over the next couple of weeks. And there are certain sketches you might return to and feel like, okay, here's something that I still feel is relevant or to how I feel today, and not only a month ago or a week ago, but I still feel that there's something there. You're excavating something based on a vague intuition. Then you just keep digging from within, and all of a sudden you're sort of sculpting something. So it's as if the songs sort of have their own will.
Dawn helps a column of morning light cut into the void through the window pane, and we are the dust widely dancing in this river of the sun, a universe of moments passing by. In the twilight of the dawn, just before the night is gone, while the moonlight lingers on in the golden hours, our souls meet in a dance, a whirling saga of 10,000 wings, a poem of flow, faintly in every space the universe sings, on every level of existence it takes place, beyond the stars, in the form of us.
like the dust in the morning sun, were whirling around by the wind